Good afternoon. Welcome to the April 2nd edition of Sports on Sunset. I'm Christy Turlington.
I'm Booba Bafoo.
This afternoon, well, yesterday was opening day in Major League Baseball. There was a weird sense of symmetry that I've noticed here between two of the most popular sports in the United States. And that's the lowering of expectations for two positions, one of each in each of these sports, that if you're going to win, you have to have dominance in. Starting pitching in Major League Baseball, running back in the National Football League. Over the last 15 some odd years, we have seen the required amount of work for these two positions go down to next to nothing. And I think the repercussions that have happened in each of those sports has been profound. I realize that you're not much of a baseball fan, but I'm sure on some level you have heard and noticed from the games you've seen on how, well, back when we were young, you still had 4-man starting pitching rotations instead of 5. You were expected to go really deep into the game, if not finish the damn thing.
At least 8 innings.
Yeah. Now, a so-called quality start in Major League Baseball is if you actually make it to the 7th inning without without allowing a bunch of runs. And in the National Football League, you could probably count on one hand the number of running backs who are the, quote, big back for their team that carries the bulk of the load.
Yeah.
What happened? Particularly in the NFL, which is more of your background. Because I see a remarkable similarity here.
Well, I'll start with baseball.
Okay.
I think what happened in baseball was Tommy John surgeries. Pitchers throwing their arms up. So they basically spaced everybody out to 5 starting pitchers instead of 4. You had so many pitchers, throwing their arms out and needing surgery that people were investing huge money in people like Smoltz and Maddox and Nolan Ryan that they needed.
But Maddox and Ryan never had. Go ahead.
But they were so afraid of losing these pitchers, these aces, to injury that they needed to preserve them.
Well, here's the problem with that. We now have it being dictated to such an extreme. The best example I can think of is Steven Strasburg at the Washington Nationals, where we didn't find out until last year that there was a limit, a severe lower limit of innings that was required of him. It affected the Nationals. They still made the playoffs. I better double check that, but I believe them to have made the playoffs.
I thought they did.
Yeah, they did. But they had, if they the belief was once he reached that innings, they weren't even going to have him in the playoffs. So they shut him down, and that's their ace. And he was perfectly healthy. He had reached his inning count. They were like, no, you don't have to pitch in the playoffs. That's utterly insane.
Yeah.
On the other hand, in football,
here's what happened with football. You had elite quarterbacks that didn't want to hand the ball off. That's the main issue. Brett Favre didn't want to hand the ball off. So they said, throw it 50 times a game. Tom Brady doesn't want to hand the ball off. So he throws it 50 times a game. Drew Brees doesn't want to hand the ball off. So they signed Darren Sproles, who can just take a dump-off pass, and that increases Drew Brees' stats. People want to see the pass. They don't want to watch it run unless the guy is Barry Sanders.
Here's the problem with what you've just said. You may not. These quarterbacks. Maybe that's the case. Neither one of us are privy to what goes on inside of a locker room in the NFL. Although I covered it, but that doesn't mean I knew everything that was going on. And back then, that was the LA Rams and the LA Raiders, and the LA Rams had Jerome Bettis, and the LA Raiders, though they used to have Marcus Allen.
Marcus Allen.
Right, and actually Alan Lazari in Kansas City. I'm thinking of Napoleon Kaufman, who was still considered a dominant back. The problem that I'm seeing is what leads, I believe, when you lower expectations, there are consequences.
Okay.
Because these a number of running backs still want the ball. The first is that despite the fact that people still claim that it's a passing league,
yeah, it is. Like, no, it's
if you want to get to the Super Bowl and win it, you're better off running the football.
I wouldn't say
Baltimore had Ray Rice, and the San Francisco 49ers had Frank Gore. Those are two of the only dominant running backs of the game that are where you could say, okay, we're going to establish the run, hand the ball off. Those are only two of a handful of backs.
Yeah, they're two of four dominant backs.
Right. And they both made the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but that's not because of them. That was because of their defenses.
Right, but I've always said that defense plus running the football gets you farther than just chucking the ball 50 times a game.
Well, that's not how Flacco got his millions.
I understand that. I'm not saying Flacco can't throw. I'm saying I'm saying that. Look, what happens? You're able to run the football. What happens? People crowd the loss.
Right.
Opens up passing lanes. Away you go. So I'm not saying that Flacco sucks. That's not the point. I'm saying that when you lower the standard, that these other quarterbacks who are chucking it 50 times a game, one, they don't have the lanes, and two, they're susceptible, if you don't respect the run, susceptible to the blitz.
True.
And oh, by the way, the consequence, aside from quarterbacks being susceptible to the blitz, aside from passing lanes being fewer and far between, is we have now taken it upon them, some quarterbacks have now taken it upon themselves to establish the running game with their own legs. That has how far the game has evolved because we have taken the responsibility away from having dominant running backs.
Yeah, I'm assuming you're talking about
Kaepernick, Griffin,
Mr. McNeedy.
Kaepernick, Griffin, other, Tebow.
Yeah.
And there are, the Wildcats. All of those things came about. Why? Because we have gone so far to the other end of the spectrum in terms of letting running backs establish the running game.
You can go farther back than that. You can go back to Steve Young and Cunningham. Steve Young started out as a running quarterback. But he was considered a freak at that particular, same for Cunningham. Right.
Now it's considered the norm. Or now people want to go out and get those type of quarterbacks. And
as long as they win.
I'm saying what I'm saying in response is that you can go through all of that as much as you want, but your better shot at winning is still getting a running back where you can establish the run and have him run 40 times a game. When you lower the expectations on that critical a position, you're putting too much at risk.
Yeah, but
not just health, but in terms of actually winning the game.
With running quarterbacks, what these teams that have running quarterbacks did, they got a solid quarterback to back these people up because they know they're not going to last a season.
You need a solid quarterback regardless of whether or not you're running the pitch.
True.
You need a solid quarterback because of the fact that without taking the pressure off the quarterback. Okay, look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers, the more they relied on Ben Roethlisberger, the less championship worthy they became. Roethlisberger was winning championships when he had a running game behind him.
When he had Bettis.
There you go.
But that's because Bettis was one of the most dominant backs.
Right. But again, lower the expectations of one of your more critical positions like that. And again, going back to baseball, same thing. We've seen it with Strasburg. How many pitchers are there now? Are truly dominant? Are true ace? You see, you didn't have to be an ace to be required to go 8 to 9 innings.
Right.
You had to be pro. That was your professional requirement.
Yeah.
And now, no. You can count on your hands the number of people who you.
It's a damn. How many innings did CC Sabathia pitch the other day?
I don't recall, but there's some. Now you're talking about pitchers leaving without not because they're getting hit. But because they're reaching a pitch count in the 5th and 6th inning.
Right. I don't know if you saw this story, but there was a kid in Japan, 16-year-old, who threw 232 pitches.
Right.
Right? Which is way more than you should be throwing, even at that age, as a pitcher. But this is what they threw back in apparently the 50s and 60s, in, I guess, the golden era of baseball. People do these kind of, like, they would throw the ball over and over again. But of course, they had sort of an upper hand back then. Nowadays, you're not supposed to, like in the pros, nobody even approaches 150 anymore.
Right. But you can still get into the 8th and 9th without going to 150.
Yeah. And I guess that's baseball as it is now. Everybody's trying to keep their pitches for the long.
What has happened? Maybe there's a parallel between running backs and starting pitching. What is not expected of running backs now that was expected of running backs then?
They're not expected to get 100 yards every game. Back in the 80s, hell, the 90s, your starting running back better get 100 yards every game, or at least close to it, or he's not starting next year.
What also
is
there something physically as well with running backs that are no longer, that is not necessarily deemed an essential?
What do you mean? Rephrase that.
For example, a running back may perhaps, for example, it's time in the 40. Perhaps, for example, it's an ability to hit a particular hole, the ability to run wide, the ability to run between the tackles.
That's still expected. What is more important is that they don't fumble. That's what people are still holding on to as far as coaches. They want somebody that's going to be able to take care of the ball, get them 3 yards so they can get the second and short. That's what they want, the second or third and short, so that the pass can have options. It's not so much they want somebody that can control a game.
Because 3rd and 3 should never be a passing down.
Right.
But it is now.
Yeah, that's what's happening. I implore all of you to watch Philadelphia this year. Chet Kelly's offense is a no-punt offense. So you're going to have people, Michael Vick going 4 downs pretty much in any situation. And that's going to be the new norm in football. 4 downs all the time. All the time offense if you're anywhere near the 50-yard line. That's what he ran in Oregon. That's what he's going to run in Philadelphia.
Oh, they're going to lose.
Yeah, they are, but he doesn't care. Michael Vick's old. They'll blame Michael Vick. They won't blame Chip Kelly. He's going to run through all of his offensive players.
If that's going to be happening, trust me, in Philadelphia, they're not going to give Chip Kelly a pass. So the ability to get 100 yards and the ability not to fumble. Is it possible, and I'm just spitballing here, is it possible then that the similar thing with starting pitching is like, look, just get us to this inning and don't give up home runs?
Yeah, don't give up more than 2 runs.
No, home runs. I don't think they're going to give up more. I think they will give up more than 2. Again, lowering of expectations. We were just talking about the so-called quality start is to get into the 7th inning and to only allow 3 earned runs.
Like when I was a kid, I'd hear like my family members, like that love baseball, talk about this pitcher sucks because he allowed 5 hits, not runs, hits. Mm-hmm. That's how it used to be.
I know.
You shouldn't be giving up hits. I'm saying 2 runs as a motive. They might give up 9 hits. They're giving up 9 hits, but 2 runs. That's the lowering of expectations there. Nowadays, you got pitchers allowing 6 runs, having a 4.8 ERA. It's still considered starting pitchers.
Well, all stars actually.
Yeah.
Not just starters. Is there anything that could be considered not just from football and baseball, but overall in terms of the physicality in sports that have lowered the standards? For example, because it is. I've noticed it almost happens simultaneously, the lowering of expectations for these positions. So I'm curious if maybe there was something cultural, and I don't mean cultural in terms of race, but culture in terms of the culture of sports, to where something like that would not only happen in football and baseball, maybe in hockey, basketball, soccer as well. Maybe there's something that we're no longer requiring. Something that we are requiring of our dominant athletes overall, and we are no longer requiring because we are expecting somebody else to be able to slack.
Everybody wants a versatile player. Everybody wants somebody that's going to be able to do more than one thing. People don't want a specialist anymore. They want somebody that can do it all. At every position. In football and baseball.
That's actually a pretty good point.
And so when you have that, you have players who believe that they can do more than they actually can. And that's the main issue. That's why you have, I'm trying to remember this, fuck it, doesn't matter. That's why you have players who routinely, what's the guy, the shortstop for fuck it, I'll hold Verlander. Go with Verlander.
He's a pitcher.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying you have Verlander who just got a shit ton of money. What does he want?
He's gotten into the World Series.
Yeah, but what does he want?
Well,
you used to have to win at least fly home one.
He wins. He just hasn't won the ring.
Right.
The thing is, he's one of those few pitchers that actually can fill.
Romo just got a huge deal, and he's won one playoff game.
Justin Verlander is way more valuable to his sport than Tony Romo was to his.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell him? By the way, that was a good closing point I might add with regards to the versatility. That might actually have a lot to do with it. Why don't you tell him what's on your mind?
What's on my mind is something that I saw on the news today on ESPN. Apparently, there's a Major League Basketball former referee, and I think it might have been Ed Hockey League, I'm not sure, who's currently under investigation for levying down his own sort of bounty to college basketball in the Pac-12.
It wasn't Hockey League.
Who was that?
I don't have the name, but
it's something.
Yeah, but it wasn't Hockey League. Hockey League's an NFL record.
Right, but it was somebody. One of the.
I don't want you to get sued. It's not Ed Hockey.
Okay. Yeah, sue me for my Pontiac. Ed Hockey. So, but it was some referee or official named Ed. Check the thing. Was on record as not on record, but said that if somebody, this coach, I can't, Arizona or some Pac-12 coach, didn't get a tee before the end of the season, or got a tee, whoever teed him up or threw him out, he would give them $5,000 and put them up in a hotel in some city or some shit like that. It speaks to the validity of another point that somebody made, before I get to my point, that college basketball referees aren't in a union.
Or not?
No, they're not in a union. Okay. They are one-off hires. So they can be hired for any game in any league. This leads to a lot of cheating and shitty refereeing because these people aren't beholden to anyone. The only thing that happens is they get shuffled off into another league where they get hired again. People are making a big deal about Baylor losing. The Baylor women's team, they lost to Louisville, right? That was some of the worst officiating I've ever seen in my life. And I kid you not, it's not because I like a couple of the players. It's because you're not supposed to be allowed in basketball to smack people in the face and not get called for a foul, or elbow them in the chest and not get called for a foul, or at the end of the game, a woman who was 6'8", chases down Brittany Griner, 6'8". She chased down a player who then jumped. Keep in mind the player is 5'11". The player jumps. Brittany Griner has her hand straight up, blocks the ball. The player falls down. They call a foul. That's how they lost the game. They were winning by 1 point. after enduring elbow punches, slaps. She was getting elbowed, punched, and slapped. The rest of the team being elbowed, punched, and slapped. Jeff Walls, the coach of Louisville, called his defense, I kid you not, the claw and one. That's what he said they played. The claw and one. Look, my whole rant here is the NCAA should damn sure follow NBA's lead on this and unionize the refs. Because if you have bad refereeing happening in the men's championship game, like it was in the women's Sweet 16, you're going to have a lot of people claiming fakes more than they already are. And that's not what you need for men's college basketball at all. I'm done. Okay. I'm sorry, I actually had a point.
Yeah.
7 jokes.
I was watching these DVDs I have of the Lakers beating the Celtics last night. And it is true that it's a couple of years later, too. A little more than 2. Mm-hmm. I will also grant people that you will never be able to beat Father Time. That is true. The idea that the Lakers got too old, however, in retrospect, is an absolute fallacy. It's utterly wrong. Because I looked at the players that were coming in, and it wasn't necessarily that all of the players were great. The Los Angeles Lakers were no longer a threat because they imploded on their own arrogance. Most of the players. Most of them. The primary example, I guess, would have to be would be Pau Gasol, who still hasn't recovered from. You see, you have to understand. 2 years ago, these announcers, knowledgeable basketball people, I think Jeff Van Gundy and I think Mark Jackson are pretty doggone smart.
Yeah.
Pau Gasol, the most versatile forward in the game, complete set of moves, and was also able before to play with another big man next to him, Andrew Bynum. Now he looks completely feckless and lost, and I would argue that it would have to be he has never been the same player since it was discovered or alleged that his own teammate was stooping his girlfriend.
Which teammate was that?
Shannon Brown, who was beloved for the way he helped ignite the Lakers in Game 6 of that series, and now is buried somewhere on the Phoenix Suns bench. Now we're talking about 2 players gone. I mean, not one who's lost, one who's gone. Let's talk about another player who's gone. Lamar Odom, married to a Kardashian. Enough said. Traded to Dallas because he started to be a pain in the ass to LA's brass, right? Now all of a sudden, he barely played for Dallas. Barely played.
And was released.
And exactly. Why? You deep it out. 2 players gone. One is a 7-footer. Another 7-footer basically lost. Andrew Bynum, gone.
Oh, yeah.
Not only gone, he's been riding a gravy train in Philadelphia all year. 2 7-footers gone. One is a diva. Another, frankly, is a diva. 2 7-foot divas. The third 7-footer still on the team lost. The guy on the bench gone. Key guy on the bench gone. Sasha Vujicic and Jordan Farmar, no longer in the NBA. Yeah. Both playing in Turkey. Not that Vujicic was a bad guy, but Vujicic was, for their first title of the 2 that were back first in Orlando, critical.
Yeah.
Jordan Farmar contributed a lot to that series in the Celtics. Both of them gone. What I'm saying is I've just basically listed off half the roster.
Yeah.
I didn't even mention Ron Artest.
Nope.
That is what's happened to the Lakers. A bunch of guys with 2 rings back to back. Half of those guys went diva. And you have to get rid of your divas. I'm sorry. If they're going to be that much of a pain in the ass, you got to get rid of them. And the other half, hey, you can sit there and say, well, maybe you got to get rid of Vujicic and Farmer. But Shannon Brown being a contributor to the diva, to basically jacking with Gasol. It's not age. Pau Gasol is like 32, which isn't young, but it's not old.
Right.
The only really old person on that team right now, oddly enough, is the one with the biggest golden win, and that's Kobe.
He is the old man.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to say is stop saying the Lakers are old.